Let's do this. Hello, my name is James Piecowye. This is Podaholiks and Tech Talk with Andrew Thomas from digitalnexa.com, which means for the next 45 minutes, we're going to talk about all that is cool, all that's awesome, all that's happening in the wild and wacky world of tech. Good to see you again, Andrew, as we continue our Zoom podcasts.
That's it. Morning. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Zoom it is. It's funny as things start to loosen up and people start to get a little bit back together. This is a very convenient way to do a podcast, isn't it?
It is. I can still hear our music in the background. Is that normal? Or?
Yeah. I always keep it going a little bit.
Oh, okay, right.
And it's
You're
just
very professional. It's just me being highly unprofessional talking over it.
Maybe you just never noticed it keeps going for a while, and then I just faded out. You know how it is.
Probably, yeah. That's the broadcaster in you. It's we're still Zooming, so I think it's just a comfort level of obviously people if they want to do it or not. But I mean, for me, the Zoom is the key, as it were. I'm all about the Zoom.
There's a song about that. Here's an interesting one, actually, because I sit here and I've got the old kit set up in the room, the home studio. I was doing I'm teaching summer school, which is kind of cool, and it is all online.
Nice.
And I use Zoom. We obviously there's some technology at the university we can avail of, and I've chosen not to. In that, the last time when we were finishing off the semester and I was using that technology, it just failed me. And you know how it is. This is the thing with technology, right? You're willing to embrace it. Yeah, you're willing to use it. And as soon as it fails you, I gave it a chance. I thought, okay, I'll give it one go. And the next time it failed again, and I just said, I can't do it. I just cannot do it. And Zoom seems to work. So here's the best one, though, that happened yesterday. So I've got 20 students in this class. It's a public speaking class. So they've got to speak, right? And I get a student who comes on to the Zoom and they're there and she's involved in it, but she says, my mic's not working, sir. And I got the Rodecaster set up and I was actually recording my class for, a little podcast situation through the Rodecaster. So I gave her my phone number and I said, well, just call. Here's my phone number. We're doing the Zoom. She loads up through the phone. The Rodecaster's got my phone on Bluetooth. I fade her up. And she's in the class, just like as if she was.
Oh, wow.
So it was perfect, and the students are just laughing. They're just going, "This is using the technology that we have."
That's right. Yeah.
But the problem that we run into it periodically when we do our podcasts, and we've talked about it, and we talked about it last week, and I'm going to bring it up again. But it's making sure in our whatever time you're doing your Zooming that the rest of the folks in the house either aren't using up your bandwidth, you don't have 3 or 4 devices on. And I notice it, sometimes when we're doing these things, my wife will get on with her classes. As soon as she powers on, for a narrow window, we get that little bit of a jitter. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I think this kind of probably brings us into what I guess we really want to talk about to start with, is the old, SpaceX launch. Yeah. And how is it they're able to broadcast from the International Space Station crystal clear, no gaps, and we can't from a distance of whatever it is 100 kilometers away, we're not able to have a solid cohesive conversation. Although I did notice I wonder if it was for a comfort level, they did the obviously, and we can get into it, but opened the hatch and went into the space station, and obviously they sit there for that photograph. And the interview, like people, we've got some incredible people here. Ted Cruz is there, and senator that's pushed the bill through for funding for these guys, and they're on an old-fashioned phone. So the people wire, like it's on a wire. They're talking to people up in space, and the people in space have got a wireless mic, but the guys on the ground have got like a phone. It just made me laugh. It made me laugh yesterday.
It's incredible, isn't it? The sort of that disconnect in technology, and you're looking at this, and one of the things that I just noticed with that whole SpaceX SpaceX launch. Everything
Yeah.
was so clean. I know it's
Yeah.
going up to space, but everything from the gantry into the capsule, they're walking through, they're driving into it. Everything is just so clean, and it's just like I'm telling you, conspiracy theorists, it'll just look like a movie. It really did look like a movie.
Yeah, well, I think conspiracy theorists have already kind of jumped on it, because when the rocket was coming back, obviously just before it landed, the feed cut off, and then it came back on when it was sitting on the pad, and then when the separation was happening, the feed cut off again, and so I think there's still some ultra paranoid people out there. But it was interesting. Obviously you'd always thought there'd be a high level of tech, and we spoke about this last week about the age of the suits and how they were 20 plus years old. But I thought it was almost like a tech paradise, almost from the suits that they were wearing, but then also, I mean, to get into a Tesla and have a Tesla drive them up to there, and I think that just showed you how movable the suits were, or how much range they had in them, because obviously previously it was people were stuck in sand, they said, but to be able to get into a Tesla pretty much unaided, and then obviously go out to the launch, and then to see inside that capsule, I mean, it was very tech,
Called
wasn't
touchscreen, right? Is
Yeah.
there any? I was looking around at it as they were showing the images. The seats look
Yeah.
spectacular. The guys
Yeah.
kind of squeeze themselves in. The suits are so small; they're so thin.
Yeah.
The one little image that I saw from the back, they've got a very small connection for oxygen and maybe their toilet. I don't know what the heck is in that little backpack, but it's tiny. Whereas when you see some of the stuff that's gone up previously, those were pretty big suits. Now, okay, the shuttle had fairly small suits as well, and but a very still kind of bulky helmets and things like that. Now, all that's changed, but it looked like to me it was all touchscreen inside the capsule. Touchscreen working with those pretty big gloves. So I thought, interesting.
I'll send you. Somebody had shared a picture of kind of Soyuz, and then the space shuttle. Oh, sorry, Apollo, then space shuttle, then obviously SpaceX Dragon 9, and the actual interior, and it's staggering how the shift is now obviously all touch. And what's interesting as well is obviously both those astronauts have been up there before. Both have been up on the space shuttle, and what they were saying was yesterday, which was quite interesting, that I thought that for all the tech out there, they had a really smooth takeoff. So they said it used to be pretty rough and I think you saw that. You used to get shaken around a lot, but it was like, exactly. But
it's like
rattling around. Exactly. James Bond style. But they Moonraker. But they said it was pretty smooth. But then obviously during the ride, I guess there's certain things when you're traveling over 7,000 kilometers an hour that are just standard, and it was a bit of a bumpy ride into the space station. But I think I mean, technology-wise, it's a technology dream, isn't it? The amount of tech that was involved to, get them up there, to bring the rocket back, to dock, I mean, it's just, the list is endless as far as what. But I think what's interesting, obviously, is it's private enterprise. So it's that's where it's at, and we've obviously got Blue Origin with Jeff Bezos, and then obviously you've got the Galaxy. Is it Virgin Galactic? Virgin, Richard Branson.
Which they had a little setback, but the pundits are basically saying, look, that's not really a setback. Where they launched their rocket from a 747, so they're already in the air, and their suborbital capsule then goes from there, and their rocket didn't work this time. But
would you go up?
No.
Really?
No.
I would.
No,
I find it reignited my kind of childhood passion. I mean, we obviously as children, we went to, the Kennedy Space Center. When I was older, I went to Houston as well, and obviously saw that. And there's a real fascination there. So I think, I mean, I haven't got a spare $250,000 at the moment. So, it's not going to happen anytime soon, but I'd want to do it. Like when I see the relative now, when I used to see obviously people strapped into that, the cosmonauts, and and you could pay. I mean, people were paying to go up.
Yeah.
That's how the Russians were funding it. The Russians were every person kind of going up there. But I mean, that didn't look like a lot of fun. But actually, the SpaceX launch looked like quite a bit of fun, and
I mean, I'm really interested in how they're making it work. I'm interested in the folks who are doing it. I think it's really cool, but I've got no interest in doing this at all.
Well,
At all.
it actually made me think about one of the things that they said and how that also impacts tech as we kind of go on. And he was saying that SpaceX has managed to pull down the cost of putting a ton of anything up into space down to about $1 million a ton, whereas previously it was 50 million.
Yeah.
So it got me thinking about tech and kind of that older tech, and I think the thing is that you see that in quite a lot of tech, but you don't, where obviously something comes out is crazily expensive. I mean, in my mind straight away I thought of TVs. Back in the day, TVs would be astronomical, and I mean, now you can pick yourself.
Think of when
exactly.
the projection screens came out, the flat screen stuff. I mean, we never owned one of those at our house. We had, the old big master tube, the cathode ray tube, and what do we have, a 20-inch or something? It was like, oh, we're commanding it here. We couldn't afford that, and now you can get a plasma or some of these 4K TVs and 4K plus they're really inexpensive. Saw them the other day. I was marveling at the relative inexpensive cost of acquiring one.
And and that's, I mean, obviously we know how that works. Obviously, if something becomes more popular, there's more demand, and there's obviously economies of scale that kick in. But I wonder how many kind of companies at the moment in the tech space are trying to produce the quality of Apple, but perhaps the price point of an Amazon.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think the thing is, Amazon has really successfully managed to make things affordable, but I don't think they've scraped on the quality, or they don't appear to have. With the Fire tablets, the Fire sticks, with Alexa. I mean, Alexa now, I mean, it's obviously an Alexa Dot, I think, is $20.
I know. Can you imagine?
Which is insane, and what you can do with it, even if you just use it to listen to your morning news. I mean, it's fine, let alone anything else. But it's what I like about, obviously, how the approach to tech is, okay, well, how can we make it more economical? How can we make it more affordable? How can we make it better? Without losing any of the quality. And I think if there's more projects like SpaceX, you start to think, okay, actually, this makes sense. And I think people strive a bit harder to do that.
So here, let me throw this one out to you, Andrew, because I think I have an idea, but I wonder, when we look at our Mac, then you go and look at a cheaper computer, when you look at your iPhone, and then you go look at a cheaper phone. Are we paying for the technology that's gone into the development? Are we paying for the name, or am I paying for the actual build? And I think I'm paying a bit for the name. I'm paying for the R&D that went into it on each device, whereas the physical iPhone doesn't cost any more than the Oppo to make. I mean, I can't imagine that there's any more of a physical cost to the screen, to the board inside. I think it's the intellectual property that's driving the price on that, and the prestige factor.
Yeah, I think the IP definitely drives that. I mean, I guess there's things like the Gorilla Glass, and the kind of force push. Some of the other kind of proprietary IP that drives that price up. But I mean, why is it that I'm sitting here on a MacBook Pro, and why is it an iPad Pro? I mean, the iPad Pro, I think there's one for like 6,000 dirhams. Or I mean, I don't know if you saw. There's the new keyboard for the iPad Pro is 2,100 dirhams.
I know. I was shaking my head. I was shaking my head, going, "Hold on, I can go buy a Surface Pro for that." It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, so I think you do step into the realms of brand at that point. And obviously there is a certain quality associated to build. And I'd much prefer to be going up there in a SpaceX than a Soyuz, but I because that's some seriously old tech.
It works though.
But
It works.
it works.
It
It works.
shakes you. I mean, you look at
Yeah.
the seats; they're bench seats.
That's it. Yeah, you rattle your fillings out your head. Yeah, I guess that, looking at kind of old tech and new tech, but it was nice. I think I mean, this almost felt like you pulled this in together, but you
Yeah.
put this in our notes about the top 25 technologies that have changed the world.
Oh man.
Um, which I thought was fascinating, really.
When you start taking a look at those things, and you start going through them, I just started marveling. We start looking at some of these things. The Apple iPhone. I mean, absolutely, everyone aspires to have this phone and this type of phone and the things that it's kind of promoted. Wi-Fi. When you think of it, can you live without Wi-Fi? No one can live without Wi-Fi anymore. I mean, if you don't have Wi-Fi, forget it. They talk about Internet of Things, voice assistants.
I mean,
that one becomes kind of interesting. I don't use the voice assistant at all. I mean, I have some Google stuff, but I never use it, and I'm starting to think maybe it's time.
I use Alexa a lot. And interestingly enough, I've started to use Siri on my Mac.
Oh, really?
So yeah, if I've kind of sat there and just asked Siri to open up a program or Google some things, I've kind of asked the question to Google. I think that's mainly because I've never used Siri on my Mac, but because of the touch bar, it's just there. So I've actually pressed it accidentally a few times, and I've done the Touch ID, but I've kind of noticed it. So I think again, when you look at some of these technology or the technological breakthroughs, some of these things you don't think about. So you don't think about the fact that now I can just kind of speak on to my Mac and ask it to do something, and it does it. I mean that's sci-fi tech, really. Speaking and communicating to devices and expecting them to do what you want is really up there in kind of sci-fi land. But the funny thing is, which has been odd, is with the touch bar, for example, with that tech, I've wanted to touch the screen, and I've never wanted to do that with a Mac. So I've kind of gone, oh, hold on, and then with a Word or usually, actually, it's quite interesting. It's like a Word, or it will be for Zoom, for example. For this at the moment, the touch bar, I've got share screen, leave, switch my mic on and off, which is quite nice, and I found that quite useful.
Yeah, that's cool.
Kind of mute myself or turn the video off. But yeah, sorry. So yeah, I think what's interesting on this, the only thing that was, I guess, odd, but which I thought they mentioned, was e-cigarettes.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's a technological breakthrough.
Well, I guess, I mean, because I'm looking at all sorts of these other things here: facial recognition, MP3. I mean, that one really took me. That's the 70s. MP3, MP4 compression. It's from the 70s, and we treat it now like it's a brand new thing. But e-cigarettes, I guess. I mean, I saw a bunch of folks with e-cigarettes the other day. I mean, I have no idea how these things work, but it seemed to me
they warm the tobacco, so there's less carcinogens. So obviously in cigarettes, what happens is you light it and it burns.
Yeah.
But with the but with the e-cigarettes, it warms the tobacco. So there's less carcinogens apparently. There's no smoke. You're not inhaling, kind of hot
smoke. Does it still burn down, or it doesn't burn down like
it's just like a little, the end bit of the cigarette, and then that's it. I mean, interestingly enough, I had a meeting with BAR, which is like British American, BAT, British American Tobacco. A couple of years ago, they kind of called me in, and when they were just looking at the e-cigarettes, and they were sitting in the meeting smoking, happily telling me that it's fine and it's safe. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And you couldn't see any smoke or anything. But I mean, afterwards, I came out with a hacking cough. I mean, it's just, it's kind of, I guess that's not really safe. But I mean, the interesting thing is that this tech, I guess it is technology, the ability to try and, even though things are bad for us, trying to make it safer for us to use them.
Yeah.
I guess that could be, but what was interesting is aside from e-cigarettes, um, I'd kind of, I've kind of, used a lot of these in everyday life without
Yeah.
even thinking about it.
I,
You kind of, they're there, they're
yeah.
taken for granted.
I mean, one of the things, social networking. Can you?
Yeah.
I can't imagine living without my social networking. And it's not that I'm trolling or things, but what do I do in the morning? I get up, I put on the news, I check my Instagram, check LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and it is part of the regular daily experience.
Yeah.
And look at a few stories. I mean, social networking is new. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not old.
I mean, I guess the thing is, I mean, I don't, I think now actually the only social network that actually I network on is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Everything else from a social perspective is not there. It's not. I don't socially network, as it were. So yeah, I mean that's. But even that, you think, yeah, okay, back to MySpace days, so kind of pre-Facebook. And there used to be something called Friends Reunited in the UK that basically
Yeah.
had all of your people from your school that you could put up a
Oh, right.
profile and
Yeah.
just kind of interact, because that was what originally obviously pulled people together. How do you know people? It's either usually through work or
Mm.
physical location or school. So that was connected through. Anything on there you thought was missing? Anything you thought, well, hold on, what about X?
Yeah, you know what? I'm looking at there, video conferencing. One of the things that I was using this morning, and maybe it's not very popular, but I was using my Ninja blender, and one of the things that so maybe it's tech enabled cook equipment, but this
Ah,
blender, so the nice thing about the blender is it's got some AI built into it, and it's got some
yeah,
different mix features that depend on which parts I've put onto the blender, and I guess it senses what's going on how much strain is being put on the blades, etc., and it adjusts what it's doing. And so I thought that whole the whole Instapot world, all of
yeah.
these things now that are using AI tools, I thought that was something that I guess maybe that comes under AI.
Did
But
you think? I mean, did you like things like, what about AR and VR? I mean,
yeah,
augmented reality and
yeah,
virtual reality. I guess at the moment
I
it still hasn't impacted us enough, right,
yeah,
to warrant being on a because I doubt without the likes of Zoom video conferencing would have been there. That's obviously at the front of people's minds,
yeah.
but I think AR and VR you thought would be on there, or I thought they'd be on
You know what? I've got one of those. I've got a virtual reality mask thing that I can put my phone into it, and I've had it
there.
for now 3 or 4 years. 3 years, I think. I don't think I've used it in the last year. I mean, I used to use it all the time. I'd put it on. I'd watch some news stuff out of the New York Times. I think they've scaled back what they were doing. It just didn't work. And I'm always
Yeah,
surprised when I go to places like Marks and Spencer's and I want to look at some clothes or something. I mean, COVID era makes having augmented reality and virtual reality, it makes it really good.
yeah,
It didn't really kick in. It's not really kicking in. The whole Google experiment, I know that they're still
mm,
working with it and they're still doing it. It's still happening in the background. But those two things, yeah, I kind of went,
yeah,
and I don't know why people aren't embracing it more. And maybe it's the stability of how it works. Maybe
mm,
maybe we don't have to wear it on our faces, so that it gives us more of a perspective ratio. I don't know. That one kind of surprised me, and I'm still surprised to this day that's not more apt. It was interesting. Video conferencing obviously has taken off and in this
yeah,
whole era. But one of the things that I was listening to this morning on the news was folks talking about Zoom fatigue, which any video conferencing fatigue. I
yeah.
mean, you have experienced it. You're on it a lot. But the number of people who are turning off their video conferencing and going back to the phone with
Right.
family thing.
Okay.
And there's more and more people doing that. Apparently, they've just sort of said, "Why? I don't need to see you." And it's just, you know, folks talking about how they're going through these meetings and there's so much more stimuli going on. It's exhausting, and they're saying it's mentally challenging for them. And so some people are just saying, I'm going old school. I'm just going to pick up the phone and have that conversation, and I can have it in the car. I can have it sit and have a coffee. I can put it on thing. I don't have to be worried about what everyone looks like. It doesn't matter. Let's just chat. And I thought, hey, that's kind of cool as well. And that kind of reminds me of a lot of tech, right? We get that rapid swing where we get all these adoptions, and then people go, do I really need this? And it scales back to a point where people who really need it are using it. I'm actually surprised with, and this is an interesting one. Speaking of video stuff, sorry to interrupt, but with my colleagues, I mean, I work with a bunch of communication scholars. They're terrible at Zooming. They're really awful at it. In fact, I'm always remarking, I think I do more podcasting and other types of meetings with video conferencing than I do with my colleagues. I teach on it, but we never meet on it. And I just find that really weird.
Yeah, well, I was talking to somebody back in the UK last week, and they said the biggest problem they've got is when they share in their screen and they forget they're sharing their screen, and they go off and start doing emails and still kind of act as if they're listening. And it's like, you're sharing your screen. Oh, okay, sorry, you know, because it's. And I think you can see that. You can kind of see with people's eyes if they're engaged or not, and kind of multitasking, as it were, to jump off. But I guess that's the challenge. If you've got connected to someone or you're meeting to someone, obviously, and I think we've been in those situations ourselves. If anyone in the meeting picks up their phone or checks their phone, or you know, just had their laptop open and started working, you'd kind of probably raise some questions and say, "Well, hold on a minute, what's going on here, guys?"
And that's a challenge, right? Because we're talking on Zoom. I'm looking at our notes on my phone, and so you're constantly looking down. I'm writing paper notes as we're talking as well, and so I've got multiple things going on, and this is the other problem, isn't it? Because you're doing this, and then you get an email, and what do you want to do? You want to check the email. You get an update on something, and it's like, oh, I gotta look, or the meeting's just boring.
That's it. Yeah, people tend to drift off, and you're getting pulled into things when you're not listening. So when you're not part of it, when you're virtually not part of it, that's a real challenge. I think I'd say one of the other areas that I think and Facebook's trying to move towards this, but I think the apps they mentioned, obviously, I think that's a real game changer when we think about apps now. I mean, I think about the apps. This is an app that you and I are talking on. I use the WhatsApp app on here. I use a whole bunch of other apps in my daily life. I mean, there's a really cool, I was actually going to mention it in the notes, but I didn't, which is called SpaceTime. So you also have a look at that. That's fantastic. So on SpaceTime here, you can see it's basically for kind of, space geeks. It tells you when's the next launch, what happens, what type of launch is it, and it's global. So it kind of gives you a breakdown of all of the different satellite launches as well. But I think with Facebook launching their new Facebook shop last week, I think what you're going to start to see from an app perspective is almost moving towards that WeChat environment, where it's a completely closed app in the sense that you don't just use one app for one thing. On that app, once you're there, or that platform, you kind of become fully engaged. So obviously, I mean, now with Facebook and Instagram, they're going to move into the e-commerce space where you don't have to leave and go to a website, which I think is interesting. Keeps you there. You're seeing the product you want. Why don't you just buy it straight away? So I think you're going to start to see, obviously, some of these evolve. What obviously on the list of 25, but I think the apps definitely kind of are the ones that I think are gonna I don't know, I mean, start to kind of make things easier, I guess, for us. That's what they tend to do.
There's another one that I just came across yesterday. I have not tried it, but I've looked at it and I've signed up for the 3-hour test module because it just looks incredible. It's called Descript. Now, this is pretty incredible. If it works the way it says it works, this could be spectacular. And what it is it's a transcription editing tool. So you can make transcripts and you can edit video and audio based on the transcripts that it is downloading.
Oh, wow.
So, for instance, our Zoom video that we're doing right now, and we're recording it, we're going to put it up, but we're talking. And think about all the meetings you go to, and it happens in the Zoom and you're taking notes. What if you could actually take the video, run it through this program, and it produces the transcript of the meeting? And what if you then wanted to edit your video and you could edit the transcript and it would then go and edit out the pieces of the video or the audio? Apparently, it does this. And I'm looking at it going, I'm going, okay, I'm going to give it a try.
Yeah.
And
does it do all of this for like $9 a month?
10.
Right. Okay. That's crazy. Yeah,
that was the other side.
Crazy.
I'm looking at it going, they say here, and they're upfront about it. They say, look, here's use it for 3 hours, put 3 hours of content into it, download the stuff, see how it works. What do you want to do with it? And there are some podcasters who are doing stuff, and they're able then to download the text, see where people, for instance, people go they see the ums and the ahs, take it out, edit it out, it edits it right out of the audio.
Edits
so
that bit out.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this going, man, this is pretty impressive. But the other side, the other side of it is, I was thinking of what you and Amit are doing with the digital growth show. So imagine you got the digital growth show, you download the transcript, now you got the digital growth show and the digital growth book. And
nice.
It says, of course, it's pretty good. I mean, AI is not 100% right now on the transcription, depends on accents, depends on stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at this going, if it works the way it says it does, and it requires minimum amount of re-editing, of course you're going to want to go re-edit anyway. But if it's pretty close on the audio transcription, that's pretty huge. And I'm looking at this going, $10 a month, if it's going to work like that, and I could transcribe all of our podcasts, well, that's a game changer. Suddenly,
so is it? How did you find that? Where did you find it? How did you discover that?
How did I discover it? So the other piece of AI tool that I use, so AI sticks together, is I use Headliner to make an audio podcast without video, but just an audio. And Headliner does a nice little social media rip feature.
Pulls it, yeah,
and it does it on its own. I mean, I don't tell it where to go. I guess it looks for consistency and things that it can easily understand, and it pulls it. So the guys from Headliner said, hey, this is another tool that because you're already using what we use, here's another company that we also use, and we use their stuff, and
nice.
Maybe you want to take a look. And so I went and took a look, and I kind of went, man, the other side where it connects back to what you're talking about, it works off an app. So yes, it's an application, but literally, I download the app onto my desktop, I boot it up, drag and drop, and takes a few hours, and it'll go and do its magic and send it back to you in a batch file. And I'm kind of going, if it really does work like this, I'm going to test 3 hours. I'm going, it's going to make a lot more work for me, because now suddenly I'm going to have more channels to populate, more things to do. But some
of these tools make life easier, but then actually, they end up taking up more of your time, because the possibilities become endless as far as how you can dissect content. And I think it's interesting how there's because obviously a lot of people are moving into this space as far as broadcasting, as far as creating their own content and editing. You do find yourself kind of diving into this a lot more. Editing, as I said a couple of weeks ago, I even dabbled around with iMovie for the first time ever, and kind of playing around with some of these tools and tricks. There's a whole movement now for no code or little code. So I mean, now even from an application, you can build an app with no code. You can kind of drag and drop and pull things across, and here you go, you got an idea, and then so the barriers to entry on some of these things are becoming almost non-existent, especially when it involves tech, obviously, where people are creating these platforms that are just intuitive. And we spoke about this on Wix the other week, where the tools even embedded in something like a Wix, where they partnered with people to edit photos or pull in content or pull in podcasts, or it's phenomenal, really. It really, I mean, I was speaking to someone the other day, and they said, "Oh, do you mind if I record this session?" And I said, "Oh, okay, no problem. We'll kind of record it. I'll record it." And they said, "No, I've got this tool that allows me to record the screen anyway. But I just wanted to ask your permission." But I mean, basically, when they started recording it, I had no notification. I had no nothing.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, oh wow, okay, yeah, there's another tool out there that kind of does something below the radar. And again, the price point is $3 a month to kind of allow you to do it. So yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's the possibilities are endless, and when you start looking at the amount of content that we can create and do something with, and do you need coding experience where you needed to know how to code 5 years ago if you wanted to put up a web page? It was there were some drag and drop things in Google and Blogger, where which is Google. We're working on that, but they were pretty basic, and times have changed.
Yeah, no, I mean, some of the ones now are just insane. The kind of intuitive side of things, where it kind of takes control for you and suggests. I was talking to somebody about Grammarly as well. You probably see a lot of things for Grammarly as far as
I use Grammarly
online.
Yeah,
oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. I use Grammarly. I think it's 9 times out of 10 it gives me a good suggestion. Sometimes it gives me suggestions that aren't good, but I think it's a tool that is very useful. And I think as a student or someone who's doing a lot of writing, to not use Grammarly is a disservice. And again, the problem is everything is it's $10 here, $10 there, another $10, another $10. Next thing you know, you got $500 worth of things that you're using, and it's kind of like using Spotify. And you pay your 15 dirhams a month or whatever, and as soon as you get out of the free zone and you get into the 15 dirham a month or whatever it is, $10 a month, you're not going back to the free zone. There's just no way.
Yeah, interestingly, as a company, we did this exercise a few months ago where we looked at. I mean, we had hundreds, thousands of dollars of subscriptions to things that we just don't use anymore. But they kind of, it's almost like that gym membership that you sign up for it and then that's it. It's there for life. But yeah, you almost want to change your credit card every year just to have a flush of like you get an email, hey man, you're not using your credit card, just failed. Oh wow, okay, I forgot that I was even using that.
Yeah, no, it's man, this is fun. Yeah. This has been a fun morning. It's been a fun chat. We still got, there's things on the list that I'm going to leave on our list that we never got to when we're talking security alerts. We still have that funky little the command button on our Apple keyboards that has got a nice little history that I wanted to have a chat about. Led Zeppelin, they put their old concert up on YouTube for free for 3 days. Just who's using this stuff? What are they doing with it? I think it's pretty darn incredible. And
interesting enough, actually, I was going to ask you, did you watch just to finish up here, obviously, because I know we've got to run, but how did you watch the SpaceX launch? Where did you go to watch it?
Where did I go to watch it? I watched it on Instagram.
Okay. Yeah, because I was watching on YouTube on NASA's channel.
Okay.
So I think that was the other thing that I found different about this time. The fact that NASA. So when you're watching NASA's broadcast, they were actively encouraging people to get social. So you're watching it on YouTube, but then they were saying share your experience on Twitter, and I mean they were pushing that kind of dual screen. To kind of watch it on here, but talk about it on here. I thought it was quite interesting.
I think it's interesting that they suddenly have total control over the distribution of that, and they can restrict it, they can control it, they can get their cameras into areas where you otherwise would have to rely on a feed going to the television networks. And the network would say, "Oh, hold on a second, we got ads that we got to run," and they had total control. And as you said, they could decide what they want to show, they could turn it off, what they don't want to show. and play it across the different media. So it was interesting. I think as an exercise, very interesting. And we'll see where it all goes. But hey, Andrew, as always, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, good stuff.
I'm looking forward to do it again. Andrew Thomas, digitalnexa.com is where you can find him. Podaholiks is what we are. Tech Talk is the program. Podaholiks with a K at gmail.com if you want to get in touch with us. Podaholiks across the socials. I don't know how you're listening to us, but I know that you are. So however you're doing that, leave us a rating. Tell us what you think. And share the link. We'll do it all again real soon. That was Andrew Thomas.
Hey guys.
I'm James Piecowye. This is Podaholiks.